Do you like to be the guy who comes in and fixes problems? Well, if you're not sure what's going on or what's causing the problem, well, it's pretty easy to become part of the problem yourself. Check out today's episode where Brad and I talk about emotions and how to deal with those feels like a better than average man. I'm Chris, I'm here with Brad, and we are glad that you're joining us today. Certainly, if you're listening to us, we want you to follow us, give us a rating. Love to hear that. Which, spoiler alert, we did find out Big Daddy got in touch with us. And so we're looking forward to having a talk with him. That's going to be coming up. I did want to just say something, make a quick comment about this shirt. I know I wear a lot of Hawaiian shirts, so this shouldn't throw anybody who knows. But this was a birthday present. When my birthday was in September, my youngest daughter, who had just got married, she and her fiance at the time had given it to me. Well, I found out that he's got the same shirt. And so if you're on YouTube, you will see a picture of him in the same shirt. So that's kind of cool. I
mean, I feel it's your trademark right now.
It kind of is.
Yeah.
Kind of is. That's what I was thinking. Oh, not your average man Hawaiian shirts.
Oh, there you go.
Huh? I don't know.
You're just trying to get me in a Hawaiian shirt.
Maybe.
That's what you're doing.
Maybe one day we'll see.
Oh, God.
Oh, well, don't be scared about that. Don't be scared about the Hawaiian shirt. Okay. And speaking of being scared, yeah, we're going to be talking about emotions and not being scared of emotions. Yeah. You know, because that's something that us big, strong men, we get all emotions. Well, yeah, look, okay, it's because you're scared of emotions, but that's okay. That's okay. We'll get through this together. We'll get through this together. Also, speaking of coming soon, my buddy Gareth that I talked about a couple episodes, so have gotten with him, and he has agreed, despite the accent and all that, he has agreed to come onto the show, and he's got a really great things that we were talking. He was sharing a little about from Ephesians 4:11. So if you for homework, for those of you who are willing, go read Ephesians 4:11. And I'm springing this on Brad again because he loves when I do this. No, this is a good thing. Right. Apparently, we have a community section in YouTube.
Really?
Did you know that?
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
know. No, I didn't know that.
Yeah. You're supposed to have over 500 subscribers. At this present time, we do not. So, but somehow we scored a community section, and we've talked about, okay, how do people get in touch with us more other than just emailing us? Well, now this community that we're talking about wanting to build, here's a place in YouTube. Yeah. From your YouTube app, from the desktop. If you're watching right now, I'm hopefully throwing in some B-reel that shows you where to find the community and taking a look at that. I actually even threw up a poll on there so that way to find out. So check out the community section if you get a chance. So there. That's what I got.
You have over 500. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, you all don't know. Until you go on to until you go on to YouTube. But yeah, YouTube, our handle is @NotYourAverageMan. So if you're at youtube.com/@NotYourAverageMan, and so it makes it easy for you to find us. So that was all right, and that's the show. And
we'll talk to you guys later.
Yeah,
don't be scared of emotion.
Don't be scared of emotions. Dude, that was a lot. Okay. Yeah. And especially after talking about tightening it up last week.
Right. That's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. But at least you know what we're going to get into. At least you have a better idea. Exactly. We're working on that.
Listen, if I ever go to McDonald's, it's not because it's the best burger ever. It's because I know what burger I'm getting. Yeah, I know what I'm getting. If I go there, it's fine. It's okay.
Yeah, that's true. You will know what you're getting from us, and we're going to be as real as possible. That's the bottom line. We're going to be as real as possible. Even and I've gotten comments about this. Even my breathing when I'm laughing, the breathing when I guess the panting. Okay, it's the real. It's me. Yeah. You're going to get me. You're going to get Brad.
So this is predating me a little bit, but I remember seeing some reruns.
This is scary.
But what's the little dog on? It's like an old cartoon. It was a little dog, like a racing cartoon. The little dog, the way it laughed, it was like all the time.
Oh, like Snagglepuss?
Maybe
is that like Hanna-Barbera? Are you talking about?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. I think his name was Snagglepuss, which is scary that I know that so off the top of my head. But the old Hanna-Barbera cartoons.
Oh, man.
We are just really reaching out to the Gen Z crowd right now.
Right?
Which, here's the thing. They actually might know that. They're probably watching these older cartoons on YouTube and stuff like that.
Like, right?
Yeah. We know exactly what you're talking about, man. It's the millennials who are going, no, I got nothing.
No. Oh gosh.
All right. Well, let's get to the topic. Okay. So men, we are fixers. Okay. There's nothing surprising about that. So here's where this ties in. So research shows that when we're able to identify and talk about our emotions, which, right, we've got them, and it's more than just mad or happy. we got it. So research has shown if we could talk about our emotions, we can identify the emotions, we actually move them from the part in our brain called the amygdala, which that's the fight or flight or freeze section of the brain. That's where all that self-protection and emotional reactivity comes from. So we'll move it from there, right? This reactive center of the brain, and we'll move it up to the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain that does the rational thinking, that's able to solve problems. So to kind of recap that. So because if it's the emotions stay in the fight or flight, then it's all about self-protection. It's all about reactivity. It's all about this knee-jerk thing. And we don't really have a lot of influence on that, right? Think about the knee-jerk. It's just this reaction that we keep doing over and over again. And we're like, well, why do we keep having these problems? And why can't I fix this? Well, because there. And so if you want to fix it, you got to be willing to get it out of that section of your brain. And you got to put it into your higher section in the brain that does do the problem solving and is rational and is able to fix it. So this is how we can fix problems. Okay. We need to actually do what fixes them. I wish I could put some ominous music.
I think you'll have better insight into this for sure. I'm definitely emotional. Like I have emotions. I'm not saying because I'm emotionless. I do have emotions. That's not why I'm saying you have insight into this. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But you've worked with a lot of men. And so like, I think that helps so much because there's some guys that can easily deal with their emotions, maybe not express them outwardly, but they can go through the whole process they need to go to, not just cut it off and forget about it. And I think like with me, I've learned to deal with them or to even express them, to like communicate.
Sure.
But I think before that, I would definitely compartmentalize emotion where I was like, okay, I'm doing this. I don't need to be worrying about this or thinking about this or feeling this. So I'm just going to put that in that box and I might get to it later, but more than likely it's not. Yeah, exactly. I'm going to shove that thing down there and focus on what I need to do.
Right. Yeah, no, but here's the key point. You said, I learned to deal with them, right? You did what you needed to do. You figured out, hey, if I'm going to be successful at this, I'm going to need to learn to do something that brings me success. And I wish,
well, I'm trying to think about steps, how I taught myself. I don't have anything. So I'm sorry, everyone that just turned this on and was like, hopefully we get some good tidbits. I think Chris will bring some good tidbits. But I don't have I wish I had okay, this is what the first thing I did. And this is the second thing I did. Yeah. I will say, I think the biggest, and I mean, I sound like a broken record when I say these things, but the biggest thing that I did was to learn to process my emotions and to get them out and to communicate them was putting God first. Like, but really diving into the Bible and reading it. Like, I think that's what really helped me, because it softens your heart. You start understanding, like, it's okay. I grew up, I saw my dad cry. I saw him, do things like that. Not all the time, but like at church, I would see him cry every now and then or stuff like that. But I did see emotion. I didn't grow up where they were like, my parents were like, you better not cry. You're a boy. You don't need to cry. Yeah. That's not how I grew up at all. But I think society kind of pushes you that way. Maybe not so much anymore. I think they kind of push you way to the other side. Could we just get like somewhere in the middle with this? So I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings and make them cry, because that's a lot of what happens now. And I do hurt people's feelings. I don't know how to. We'll see. Yeah. I'm trying to work on that too.
Yeah, not the goal, but and if you're already getting like, oh, I'm going to turn this off, they're going to talk about like, make it, I got to cry. No, that's yes. Where the suggestion is not to go like watch The Notebook and then sob or something like that. That's not part of the steps.
Yeah.
The steps are right that you like it or not, because we are created emotionally. As emotional beings, right? That God had done that. We got to talk about the emotions. There's a saying I heard once that you got to deal with the feels, or the feels deal with you.
Oh, that's good. I like that.
Yeah, and that's the problem, is because as men, like you said, a lot of us didn't get shown this example of emotion. I mean, like for example, so my dad, he is a child psychologist. His training in that time, because that's what they did, is they taught you to kind of always be that calm reason, that calm voice. And so that spilled over into the house. And he was usually the calmer kind of thing. And so yeah, I did I ever see my dad cry? I don't know if I had, but he wasn't like anti-emotion or suck it up. So I wasn't in one of those households where I just had that I got in trouble for crying, or I'll give you something to cry about, or anything like that. But but a lot of guys did. A lot of guys, or that messaging, whether it was intentional or not, the message still came across that guys don't cry. And we're not even talking about crying. We're just talking about dealing with the real emotions, because unfortunately what happens, and look, we're going to walk through this together. We got each other's backs. No man gets left behind in this. But what happens, unfortunately, is when these emotions kick up, they usually all go to anger if we don't know what else to do with them. So that's how they'll deal with us. If we're not dealing with the feels, then the feels deal with us, usually by taking them to anger. And I was thinking about what you're saying, diving into the Bible. And because we're emotional creatures, I'm trying to think, it's like something crazy, like over 700 times we're told to rejoice.
Oh, wow.
Right. And different. Yeah. It was something really crazy, like twice more than they talk about money or fear or stuff like that. Yeah. So I think fear is like 360 times. So I think it was like twice the amount of fears talking about rejoice. But even then, fears are addressed over like 360 times in the Bible, to weep with those who weep and rejoice with those who rejoice. Paul talks about it. What was that? I forget the verse, but Paul talks about be angry, but don't sin in your anger. So being angry isn't necessarily a problem. It's not a sin. It's what we do with it. And I've even joked about my favorite memory verse is John 11:35. Jesus wept.
Yep.
Now, obviously, joking because of the size of it is. But here's also one of the cool things, because it's pretty profound. That idea of that term for wept was like the ugly face cry. Right. So it wasn't just a tear came to Jesus's eyes, and it's in both of the times when it happened, because it happened 2 times. It happened then when Jesus was getting ready to raise Lazarus from the dead, and it happened again on the triumphant entry when Jesus had wept for Jerusalem during Passion Week. Both times were public, both times were ugly face, and both times were a deep overflow from how he felt for the people and the pain that they were going through and all that. And so, look, if it's good enough for Jesus, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I know. I like that you're saying, I think an important point too is those emotions. I agree 100%. Like they do manifest in anger if you don't know how to handle your emotions or how to communicate them. You need to get them out. But also, like, people think, he said, like, Paul's like, it's okay to be angry, basically. Like, it is.
Yeah.
These emotions, God made them. Like, they're God-given, you know, like, but it's what you do with them that, I mean, it's like everything. God's made everything, right? Like, he made sex. It's what you do with it that makes it wrong. He made emotions.
Absolutely.
It's what you do with it that makes it wrong. There's times like one of my core values is justice. Like I need justice. And it is, I've worked on it a lot because a little bit of a stronghold, but it's something that God's given me. Like that is part of intertwined in me is this core value of justice. Now, the reason I say that I've worked on it is because it can get to the point where I can't forgive somebody. Like I feel like no, you've circumvented what should happen to you, and I'm having a hard time forgiving you for it, right? And so I know it gets crazy. And this
I will be God's hand.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this is coming from the guy that had a road to Damascus experience. Like I should have gotten everything that was coming to me, and I didn't, you know? And so like, yeah, I've had to like seriously work on this. But that's the point I'm making is God's given me that. But I've done it to an extreme. And so I've had to like back it off and understand like God's given me this core value. God's given me these emotions, but I also need to control them. Like, I don't know how many times in the Bible, Paul talks about controlling yourself, having discipline and all these things. And that's what this is all about.
Self-control. Oh, come, you've crossed the line there, sir.
Yeah. We just got shut off, like out of
we might get blocked.
Yeah, we might. We're probably blocked right now. It's all over.
Yeah. Well, and I was even thinking about back in episode 3 when I was at Confessions of a Passive Husband. My issues it wasn't about other people's emotions. It was that when they had big emotions, it kicked up my emotions, and I didn't know how to handle my emotions. And that's where I got. So it's your anger, defensiveness, right? There's these things that they creeped into there. So when we're feeling, like it's some common ones, right? Feeling sad, feeling hurt, feeling inferior, disrespected, or inadequate. These are pretty big ones for guys. Controlled, failure. You know, look, we're not going to give you an exhaustive list. Although, hey, you know what? I got a list. I'll throw it on our community board. So you know what? And that way nobody has to go, hey, could you give me those words about the emotions and the list about the feelings, all that?
Right.
You can go get it. No one will ever know. No, right? But because if you could start to recognize, hey, you know what? I felt inferior or I felt inadequate here. Then that could keep me from getting defensive. Okay.
Yes.
So I'm gonna share a personal disclosure. Right. So I was riding in the car today with my producer and my wife. For those of you all who missed the joke. All right. But so right in the car, I'm driving, and she had asked me about some of these feelings as far as some of the ones that I don't like feeling. And I started answering the question, but while I was answering the question, a car wanted to turn a left in front of me. And it was a 4-lane road and all that. And we were all slowing down, stopping to the stoplight. And so I'm like, well, do I have enough room to stop? Should I stop here? Or is there enough room for me to pass and let them turn behind me? Trying to figure that out. And also I'm making sure they don't get hit from the cars in the right-hand lane, all that kind of stuff. And so I don't want, because I'm normally the first responder to car accidents and stuff like that. It's a blessing and a curse. Anyway, so So she brings up, so she gets upset with me for like, she's like, well, just stop. Just, you just either stop or let them go. I mean, what are you doing? You're confusing them. You're just these kind of things. And ironically, what I had said is, I hate when I feel like like I've blown it, like I've made something, I've done the wrong thing. And then so once we had a little discussion about that was entrenched in the car episode, I saw people coming. I could have done right where I got defensive. And there may have been some anger. We rolled up to the light, and I was able to say, hey, look, so what you asked me before, I hate feeling like I blew. I hate feel like I'm the one who messed things up. And when that happens, I tend to get defensive, and I tend to rationalize why I'm not the one who should be, who's to blame. I'm not, to get myself out of looking like I'm the one who messed things up.
Yeah.
So, true story. Happened today.
Well, the whole defensive posture, you can see that. And if your spouse, if you're married and you say something and your spouse is defensive when they answer back, it happens to us. And I'll just ask what's wrong, because I know that particular question or back and forth has nothing to do with the snarky remark or defensive, thing coming back. It's more of like what's really going on? Like, what's in your head? What happened? What did I do something?
Sure.
But a lot of it, I think, for men, now I won't speak for women's emotions. Like that's a whole nother, I'm not even going to open that at all. But for men
we're not charging you for this.
No. So for men, the snarky remark or defensive comment back or just getting angry, I would say, man, almost all the time, it's got to be, there's something else behind it, right? Not feeling like what you were just saying, right? I hate to feel like I blew it. So if I blew it, then I get frustrated with myself, then I get snappy. And then if someone asks me a question, I snap back and I'm like, I didn't even mean to snap back at you. Or I'm not feeling adequate, right? Or feeling embarrassed. I know, like, I don't think I've done this myself. There are times where I feel embarrassed, but I've also laughed at myself since I can remember. And so like literally I've done something and it's been stupid and I laugh out loud. It's just something that I've always done. But I've seen other people when they get embarrassed or something new is going on and they don't know exactly how to do it or they're still learning, they kind of feel stupid. So then what happens? They get defensive, they get angry, and it's instead of dealing with the emotion that's really there, it's this, I think it's natural. It's a natural response to what that emotion's causing.
Yeah. It's self-protective, right? Where the emotions are dealing with, we're not dealing with the feels. And so the feels are dealing with us and it's sending us in a different direction. And because the person sitting next to us, whether it's our spouse or buddy or whomever's around us, when we get that way, they're not going, oh, he probably feels embarrassed, right? Because when you're being angry or snapping and stuff like that and going, dude, what's wrong with you? If you're right, the last thing you're probably thinking is, were you feeling a little inadequate? Were you feeling a little, embarrassed or inferior? Did you feel like you blew it back then? No, you're right. You're coming at me. So now I'm coming at you. And next thing you know, we're both in the ditch instead of like, I love what you said. That's another thing is to recognize in others, at least you recognize it in Lisa, but recognizing yourself, hey, you know what? There's something else going on. And that's why if we could figure out what else is going on, then we can actually address that. Whether or not we're going to tell the other person, hey, I'm feeling inadequate, or hey, but I'll share another story. I've got a whole lot of them, but I'm putting in a new ceiling fan in our old house, and I'm replacing the ceiling fans, and Jamie keeps asking me, hey, are you sure you're okay with doing this? Hey, you sure you know what you're doing? Hey, you're not going to burn down the house, right? This you do know what you're doing, right? It was probably at least 5 times, right? And the 6th time she asked, I'm like, yes, I know what I'm going to do. I know what I'm doing. I'm not going to burn down the house. You don't need to keep asking me this, right?
Yeah.
Well, She just wanted reassurance. She just wanted to know, hey, the 3 seconds of reassurance, even if I had to do that 6 times, on the sixth time, could I still not give her 3 seconds of reassurance? Did that, what did that cost me? The 18 seconds out of my life to gift my bride with reassurance, where she doesn't have to think, hey, this is our kids' room. If am I going to wake up at some point smelling smoke, and then it's already
coming out of her.
Yeah, kind of in our kids' room. And anyway, but what was going on with me is I was feeling inferior. I was feeling inadequate. I was feeling like she was saying, she was questioning whether or not I knew what I was doing, and questioning my capabilities and my ability to do that.
Yeah.
I didn't recognize that myself.
No, it's totally true. Oh no, it's just, I just think about all the times that I've snapped back at my kids or at Lisa, and it is that. It's like, yes, you can be frustrated. There are times when you're frustrated. You've had a long day and you get frustrated, and that's not really what we're talking about right now. It's more of like, it's a great example what you just said. Like, you're fixing something and you're not an electrician. You're not a mechanic. You're not a carpenter, but you're doing these things because this is what you do when you have a house. Like, if you don't own a house, this is what happens when you own a house. You are a carpenter. You are a mechanic. You are electrician. You are all these things. And so you might not know. Yeah, a plumber. Yeah, for sure. You might not know exactly what to do. And so you're trying to fix it. And then you get asked questions, or it's taking too long, because a little project can turn into all day sometimes, especially if you don't know what you're doing. So then you get frustrated. And then if anyone says anything, then you snap back at them, which really, in all actuality, it's literally because you don't know what you're doing. Like, to an extent, like, you might kind of know what you're doing, but you don't really know. You're not an expert. You're not an expert at it. And that's fine. But you hit it on the head. Like, after any time that I've snapped back or gotten frustrated with the kids in this kind of environment where I haven't been dealing with my emotions, I don't feel good. And I end up having to go and apologize. I mean, there's nothing good that comes from that. So being able to recognize it and then take the extra 3 seconds and reassure them, hey, you know what? I looked it up on YouTube a few times. I think I got it down. I'm not 100% sure, but I don't want the house to burn down either. So I think I've gotten it, and just that little reassurance. And then you have a great dinner later on that night instead of a quiet dinner and everyone's mad at each other. Because I know it's happened in our household. If one of us gets mad and does that, then the kids start getting mad. And then it's just like this wildfire that goes through the whole house. And then all of a sudden you're like, what just happened? Like, why is everyone mad? Well, it's because you couldn't handle your emotions, right? And now it's flooded to everybody. And then you just have a bad night.
Yeah. As the leader, right? Because you're not stepping up. You're not taking care of things. Your own fear of failure had stepped in and had done. And unfortunately, and again, not calling you all out, calling you up. Unfortunately, a lot of guys, they'll do that when that happens. And then they won't be the bigger man and step back in and be an example of forgiveness by asking for forgiveness, by saying, hey, you know what? And showing humility and showing that here's how grace and forgiveness works. That I blew it. I'm confessing my sins to each other, so that way God can forgive me, and that way I can get forgiveness, and we can reunite. We can have reconciliation, because we're all have a ministry of reconciliation. So if I blow it, I got to be man enough to step up and say, okay, here's what I did wrong, and here's how I want to make it right. So that way we can be unified again. Because like your point to that flooding and how that spreads out, it's that disunity spreads, and that's exactly what the enemy wants. Exactly. Well, here's another example, because these are quick examples, not for me, but just driving in the car. Right? Yeah. Where the guy's driving, the wife's like, oh, hey, honey, the turn's coming up here. I know where the turn's coming. I know how to drive. You think I don't know how to drive? I've been driving longer than you. How many tickets do you have? How many accidents have you been in? That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Or the next favorite one is, I knew you were going to miss that turn. Well, why didn't you tell me? Because last time I tried to tell you. Yeah. You're right.
Yeah. You got mad. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I want to get there too. You want to get there. I want to get there. You want to be safe. I want to be safe. You don't want the house to burn down. I don't want the house to burn down. We're all on the same team. We have the same goals, but but not recognizing these emotions, not knowing what's going on, they're jerking us around. Right.
So
and not
would
being,
would you say like, how do you, like I said earlier, I don't have a list of what I did, to start understanding my emotions or start really controlling them. But I think you have to start understanding them too, where they come from, how they manifest in your life. For me, I would say, and this is what I want to ask you, like, how would you tell someone like to even start being aware about them, or what, I guess, what steps would you take? For me, it was, you hit it on the head right now when you were saying it. I know earlier I said I jumped in the Bible and I started doing all that, and I did. Like, what came from that was laying my pride down and becoming more humble. And so when I started to become more humble and laying my pride down, then these things started being able to come out, where I was okay with telling my wife, I'm sad, or this makes me sad, or yeah, I feel inferior right now, or I don't feel capable, I can't do this, or these things where I was able to openly communicate them because I did humble myself, but it was through experiences that I don't want people to go through. Sure. I mean, I think that I'm passing this wisdom down to my kids because I don't want them to go through what I went through, to learn that you need to lay your pride down and become more humble. So I guess, like, for guys listening, what would you tell a guy that's having an issue with this? Like, how do you even begin? I guess, because I mean, if you think about it, someone's listening right now, emotions are crazy, not clinically crazy. I probably shouldn't use the word crazy. I know I'm trying. See, these are the things I'm trying to work on, right? I know crazy is not a good word, but emotions are bouncing around in your head, and you don't know how to handle them. You don't know how to like express them because you feel like you'd be a wuss maybe, or you just don't know how. Maybe you just don't know how, period. Like, it's not about, I feel like I might not be as tough as I am if I don't express this, or what. It's just literally, I don't know how. So I've never worked with a guy that's had these things pop up. And so I was just curious, like, what would you tell someone? Sure.
Well, I mean, one of the things is if it's extreme, right? Like if you're finding that you're just unable to control your emotions, and they are controlling you, and you're to an unhealthy level, right? If you're damaging relationships a lot, get help. There's help out there. There's online anger workshops. There's lots of you can do, and that's nothing but a great example to go, hey, you know what? I could do this better. I could be better at this. So there's no shame in doing that kind of stuff. It's like, you're just saying, I want to be a better person, a better version, be more like how God created me. And I need somebody who knows how to do that better than I do to help me out. So that's a first thing. But if we're just talking more of the average kind of day-to-day kind of stuff, you got to know it, right? Because look, if you find yourself getting defensive a lot, if you find yourself going into anger a lot, or your things are turning into arguments unnecessarily because of hey, this job is taking longer than I thought it was going to, and it's the first time I'm doing it, and I'm a little insecure about it. I think I'm doing it right. I think it's going to turn out right, but I'm not completely sure. I don't want to blow it. I don't want to be if my fear of failure is kicking in, right? You gotta realize that. You gotta start to recognize that and work on self-awareness, right? Ask yourself, what is it that's going on? So that's where I will put a list there of emotion words, because if you can start to look across this list of emotion words, then you can start to pinpoint, oh, okay, here's a word. Okay, that's pretty close to how I'm feeling. That makes more sense. So now I can verbalize it. Now I can bring this up into my prefrontal cortex, and now I can actually start to process it and to work with it instead of just it pulling my strings and pushing my buttons. So that's a great first place, because usually, right, we go into these, not only just the defensiveness and anger, but if we're not doing that, we go into escapism, right? We try to shut down. We'll self-medicate. Episodes 7 and 8, we talked about the pornography. Those, a lot of guys are going to pornography not because it has nothing to do with sex, or very little to do with sex.
Yeah.
It has to do with the escapism. It has to do with the overwhelm and the anxiety or depression or stress they're feeling. And they're seeing this as a way to self-medicate their way out. I mean, they don't realize that's what they're doing, but so they're abusing that to self-medicate. So all these are things that are covering up what's really below the surface. So if you can start to put your finger on that, and you can start to recognize, well, here's some good questions to ask yourself. So some good question to ask is, what feelings do I hate the most? And what do I typically do to try to get rid of it? Right. And look, you're going to have to go on YouTube to be able to see it. I don't know where. If you're listening to the podcast, you could hit rewind. I'll even see it again. Yeah. What feelings do I hate the most, and what do I typically do to try to get rid of it? Okay. And then so once you process that, spend some time. So we're like really a lot of times, guys, especially we don't reflect internally enough. We just kind of push on and keep moving on, or that's where we avoid. That's where we escape. But if we want to make change, like, if nothing changes, nothing changes. Mm-hmm. So you got to be willing to do that. And then another good question to ask yourself is, what is my biggest fear, and what do I do to avoid it? Right? Yeah, what is my biggest fear, and what do I do to try to avoid it? Because those are probably a great place to start. Those are things that are going to trip you up and are going to pull you in and kind of get you trapped. So is there a clear step-by-step? No. I mean, start to become more aware of what emotions are out there besides the 5 that a lot of guys think of: happy, sad. Like and I've heard it a lot of times. I'm not an emotional guy. I'm not emotional. Yeah, I've seen you at a football game, I've seen you in your living room watching sports. Right. Yeah. I don't cry. I don't cry. Men don't cry. Yeah, I've seen you when your team lost, when you're at the championship.
Yeah. And you know what's crazy about that? Like, I get it. I'm a sports fan. Like, I'm not going to pretend I'm not. But what's interesting about that is that guys can do that, and they're fine with it. But I mean, I told someone the other day, and it is funny. But like, there's movies, I'll see certain movies and I tear up. It's not even a movie that I should be tearing up at. Like, I'm not kidding you. Top Gun, Part 2, like the new Top Gun. Why? Why did I tear up at that? No idea. Like, I don't know. There's probably like some people right now like, oh man, you need to work with this guy, Chris. But, like, I don't know why I teared up, but I got all emotional during the movie. And it was probably 100% like nostalgia. Right. I grew up with the original Top Gun, and I thought it was the most awesome movie ever. And then seeing this one, but there's movies that legitimately, if I tell someone like, oh yeah, I teared up at that, they would be like, what? There's no reason why. But for whatever reason I did. I have no idea. But I can at least admit that and understand that I might not fully understand why I do it yet. But there are some things that happen, and all of a sudden, I don't know, I'm not like ugly crying or anything like that. It's just something where I get like all teared up about. But I was telling someone that, and they were laughing about it. But at the same time, guys, they might not talk like that. And I'm not saying like I've found the solution to all the things. I'm not trying to brag on myself at all. But guys will be so passionate about, oh, my team's going to be in the Super Bowl, or they won the Super Bowl, or whatever, but they can't say they got teared up seeing their kid do something that they get real proud about, or just love. Like, I've looked at my kids before. They don't even know I'm looking at them. I've looked at them and I start kind of tearing up because I'm like, man, I love them so much. And look what they're doing. Like, they're growing. Yes, they make mistakes, whatever, but it's like you see them growing up. I mean, I'm sure you were emotional at your daughter's wedding.
Like, yeah,
absolutely. I mean, it's just interesting. It's so interesting to me where I guess it's acceptable, right? There's places where oh yeah, like your team lost. Of course you're
Yeah.
sad. You're going to cry. Or you were at a wedding and it's your daughter or your son. Like, of course you're going to get emotion. But why, I guess, is it so acceptable there? But then let's say at church where that dude is like on the pew or in the chair listening and he's just like stone faced the whole time. And it's like, dude, you can't tell me. Like, you know what got me? I was listening to, it was a YouTube short, or not a short, it was a whole video years ago. And it was about Barabbas. And man, I was bawling because when this pastor, it's Judah Smith, this pastor, he talks about Barabbas and he basically goes into like, we are Barabbas. And Jesus is there.
Yes.
Like we are the Barabbas. And I was like, oh my God. And I'm like tearing up. I'm like sharing it with Lisa as fast as I could and like talking about it a lot. But in essence, that's not really acceptable, right? I mean, in my world it is, because you know, this is the world I live in. But overall in society, like that's weird. But my Dallas Cowboys not making the Super Bowl again, that I'm okay to cry.
Yeah.
Right?
Or my fantasy league.
Yes. Yeah. My fantasy league's doing horrible, like here. But when I realized like that I was Barabbas, or that's who we are in this story, like Jesus did all this and all, and it's like, well, that's not acceptable. I love what you said though. Like, let's go way back to the beginning of this. Jesus wept.
Yeah.
Like the passion he had for the people around him, like he wept. And Jesus, for those of you that might not know this, he wasn't a hippie that was tiptoeing around tree hugging things, because those men would not have followed him if he was like that. This was a man's man that walked the earth. Like, come on. Like, you know,
you had rough fishermen.
Back. Yes. Yeah. He wasn't this European drawing that everyone thinks of, right? Like with these soft hands and like, oh, look at him. That's Jesus. No, that wasn't Jesus. Jesus was a rough man, a carpenter. I'm sure he had calluses on his hands. Like, this was a guy, a man that walked the earth with other men. Other men were drawn to him. Back in those days, men would not have been drawn to skinny jean, tree hugging, tiptoeing through the tulips dude. That would not have happened. Like, they would have been like, your tunic is too tight. That's super weird. Like, stop hugging that tree. I need firewood. Like, these are the things, right?
Yeah.
No, Jesus was not that. Like, these guys were drawn to this man, one, so passionate, unashamed, unafraid, like just bold. And you want to get into like a little bit of my almost minor in Bible. They thought he was going to overtake the kingdoms, like by force. And so not only did they not see him as this weak person, or nor was he, but this was the man's man that was going to overtake kingdoms on earth for Israel. Like, that was who they were following. So you hear scriptures like he wept, or he was emotional, or all these scriptures where before he was crucified, crying and sweating and asking God, like, take this cup from me. Like, he didn't want to go, you know, like that's another point in the Bible where if you read it, it wasn't like Jesus was like, okay, it's my time, hang me from the cross. No, he like pled. And then he was like, but if your will be done, right? Your will be done. And then he moved on with obedience. But like those emotional responses in God, or in, well, I mean, it is God, but in Jesus walking the earth, like, and then to think that men today are afraid or nervous or whatever about emotional responses, like, take a step back and really look at it. Like, it doesn't make you look weak. I've never heard of anyone going like, oh, well, that dude over there can express his emotions, so like, man, I'm not going to listen to him. I've never really heard that. Maybe it is said. I don't know. Maybe people say it about me. I have no idea.
Well, and I'm just thinking, look, in the people, and again, not trying to call people out, but if you're trying to conform to the world, that's the weak stuff. Not being willing to step up and going, you know what, this is who I am, and this is how I was made, and this is what I'm going to do. I'm not going to conform. I'm not worried about what you all may or may not think of me, because I might cry at Top Gun or Field of Dreams when at the end where you want to have a catch. There's great. There's kind of things, because so that's it. And I love your analogy with Jesus, because true, they thought that he was going to overthrow the Roman Empire. Yes. So this is not just so this isn't just, you know, like somebody in designer skinny jeans and an embroidered shirt,
and an extra long t-shirt.
Yeah. So this was sort of, but it just to kind of bring it to help bring this home, right? So we are created with emotions, right? And we've got them in there. And if we're going to have self-control, we've got to know what they are, and we got to recognize what this is, and then be able to control them. If we want to be fixers, if we want to be the fix the problem guy, well, then here's the way you fix the problem. You start to get a hold of this stuff, and you don't let it push your buttons and push you around, but you decide, hey, you know what? If I'm going to have these emotions, I'm going to recognize the emotions. Yeah, this bugged me, this is stuff like that, and I'm not going to make me do these other things that keep me from having to avoid the because look, Ecclesiastes 3:4 says there's a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, right? So let's bring this all home. The average man hides his feelings, he gets mad, or he checks out. The above average man does the hard work, he learns to identify how he feels, and shares with the one he loves. And we want you to be better than the average man. Thanks for joining us. We look forward to seeing you next time.